My one very good friend said to me one day, she was listening to me like complain on the phone. I'm probably mid-30s, making all these bad choices with dating and work and all this. And it was because I was coming from a place of self-loathing. And my girlfriend, she listened to me for a while and she goes, Jes, every time I talk to you, you're so negative. And I'm not normally that way. I mean, I'm not this way now, right? But she said, you're so negative. And I was like, what do you mean? It's his fault. He did this happened, blah, blah, blah. Why? I'm the victim. And she was like, you got to stop it. You got to stop it because it's not working for you. Number one, it's not who you are. And if you want to move beyond this point, you're going to have to change this. You're going to have to change your attitude. And having a friend say that to you, and she said it to me lovingly. I'm saying it a little more direct. But she was very clear. She said, you're so negative. It changed everything. It was like popping a bubble. It was like the pin that finally woke me up, right? From kind of this sinking ship. Like I deserve to be miserable. And I said, I don't deserve to be miserable. There's a lesson in this.
Welcome to the 5 Flavors of Happiness, hosted by Susan Piper.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for tuning into the 5 Flavors, a podcast where we talk all about happiness, how you got it, how you keep it, and how it's changed. Today, I am so excited to sit with Jes Averhart, keynote speaker, fellow podcaster, founder of Jes Company, 4th generation entrepreneur. That's incredible. Your family. Creator of 28 Days of Reinvention, which I'm really excited to dive into.
Awesome.
3-time award-winning author.
Yeah.
Jes, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Susan, for making a platform on happiness. We need more of that. So I was like really excited to get your invitation, and I'm thrilled. I saw you had Brett Blair on, who's a dear friend, and I was like, listen, if you and Brett are endorsing this, I can't wait to be a part of it and meet your audience. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, we are thrilled. This is a relatively short podcast, so we're just going to dive right in.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with our signature question. What are your 5 flavors of happiness?
Yeah, I love this. I love that you start with this. I think it was interesting to think about that question and, be a little introspective. So here are my 5. I think the first is not betraying your curiosity. So for me, it's like leaning into your curiosity. I think it's the wellspring of all things new and fun and adventure and discovery. And, I don't know. It's just like I learned about oak trees have this thing called a mast year where they make a bunch of acorns in certain years and other years they don't. And I only know that because somebody mentioned it. And then I was like, what? And I just happened to write it down and I put it on my to-do list to sort of think about later. When I was in Nashville last weekend, I just started to like look into it. And I find it fascinating. Like I'm totally into it now. But like if I didn't have that curiosity, if I betrayed that moment and didn't write it down, right, I would never sort of have this new awakening around whatever oak trees, which is kind of cool. So curiosity, I think, is really important. I think it unlocks various places of happiness that we haven't ventured into yet. I like to invest in things that matter to me. So when I'm investing in it, not just talking about it, but doing it. So I have this whole idea around a say-do ratio that we have to do the things that we say we're going to do and not just, talk about it. So why I'm in a do-rag today and sitting in my car, and if your folks are able to see me, right, they'll see that and be like, she is not prepared for this podcast. But truly, I agreed to do this podcast, but then also an organization that I'm on the board of called the Joel Fund. They are doing a cleanup day for a new veterans center that they are getting ready to build and taking old properties. And so we went in and like took out stuff out of the house and cleaned up the yard and all of that stuff. My mom happens to be a veteran and my dad as well. And so that's really near and dear to my heart. So when I'm able to do a thing and not just be on the board and say a bunch of things and approve minutes, but do the thing in my community, with my son's school, whatever, that to me is happiness. Like it's very meaningful. And then quickly, because I know we're short, we don't have tons of time. So I want to get through these other ones, but I love to host and entertain. So I love having people over my place. I love to think about what's the theme. I love booking the DJ, getting bartender and all the things. I love having people at my home. And I think it's because you get a chance to be sort of the curator of an experience. And so it makes me very happy, but I hope that it makes them happy too. So I love to share that moment. Traditions, big on traditions. I grew up with a family that honored tradition, Christmas, various holidays, birthdays, unbirthdays. Like we just did everything, all kinds of crazy things. And I love to honor those traditions and pass them on. So when I'm in a moment that's traditional, that feels like I'm sort of honoring the past and passing it on to my son and maybe his kids, right? I love that. So that makes me very happy. And then the last thing I put down here was in my mind was just following my gut. And again, it goes on to this idea of betraying ourselves. I think in this Western civilization, right, we get told what to do by social media. We get told what to do by our religion or our family upbringing or this area that we live in the world. So if we're in the South, we have to behave a certain way. If we're in the North, we're supposed to be away. I'm from the Midwest and I live in North Carolina, so I have a whole mashup. But it's this idea of like kind of threading the line, like what's important to you and knowing yourself enough to be able to trust your gut and not betray yourself in a moment just because the world is telling you otherwise. And so those things make me happy when I know I'm kind of honoring that place, that threading of the needle.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. What I was thinking, and when I was researching you about how your mom, and you were stationed in Germany, and she was a military vet. And then I was thinking how you were in the Midwest, and now you're in North Carolina, and how you were talking about the traditions and honoring that and how you behave different ways.
Yeah.
There's cultural norms. So talk to us a little bit about how you reinvent yourself based on maybe where you are physically or where you are in your life and how that all kind of threads together.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. I think, reinvention is two things. It can be a choice. So we can choose, like right now, you and I could decide, you know what, we're going to do something totally different. We're going to change everything about us. We're going to move in the world differently. Maybe we're not living into our core values or whatever, and we decide this is what we're doing. And so today is the day one. Other times, reinvention is kind of forced upon us because of a life, maybe a tragedy or a life moment where you get married or you have a child, right? And so you truly are changing how you moved yesterday because of something that happened today, and maybe it was unexpected. And so I think, the latter, the one where you don't have options, right? It just kind of happens to you. That's a different set of instructions, right? Than if you walk into it where today is a choice, because you have a little bit more time, you have a lot more latitude around how you move, and you can be very thoughtful about it. And so that's the work that I do, is around this thoughtful reinvention where women opt in and say, you know what, I'm ready for something new. I know there's more. And it generally, just as an impetus for you to think about, it comes from, because I've heard some of the other podcasts that you've had, it comes from a place of, like, we call them crucible moments, right? It comes from a moment where you're like, I can't turn back from this thing that I have in my mind, or this dream that I'm in pursuit of, or this life that I've been talking about, and now it's time. So you literally cannot turn away from it, and you have to be forced forward. And so what I always ask women to do the first couple of days in our work together is to do an assessment. And we do this work where we ask women to text other people that they trust and that they care about and that they honor their opinion, and ask them, like, how do they show up in the world? Like, what are their strengths? What are their areas of growth? And get that feedback in real time, do their own audit, and then sort of reconcile the two. Because what we don't do enough of is understand how we're moving from a position of strength. And when you're in a reinvention story, wherever you are in the world, you need to move from a position of strength, not weakness. But oftentimes we don't honor or know what our strengths are. We just spend a lot of time on our weaknesses. If we can get that sort of crucible moment figured out, if we can get that pivot point understood, then it's much easier to go forward, because we're not constantly battling our insecurities and our lack of confidence. So I'm talking around that, but I think the very first thing that folks need to do is just figure out, how do you show up in the world? Where are your areas of strength? Where are your areas that you need to improve on? Like, and that's hard to hear sometimes, but if we're going to look at one side of the coin, we got to look at the other.
Absolutely. I still get reviewed at work, and it is so hard to hear the negative.
Yeah.
But now I've kind of taken the mindset that it's a blessing and a gift when someone cares enough about me to tell me what I'm doing wrong, because then I could go on the road to get better. But what I'm really interested in with you, Jes, is you are a pretty amazing woman. And when I go on your website and I see all the work that you've done and that you continue to do and how you inspire so many people, how did you get there? How did you fight your inner demons, or that little voice inside your head that says, no, you're not going to do that. That's for somebody else to do. How did you do it?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that I'm an amazing woman. I think you're amazing. I think we all have our little nuggets, right? And so I appreciate you again saying that. It's very kind. But the truth is, and I love this, I love that you asked me this, because people will look at my website, they'll go to my Instagram, they'll see the car that I drive, they'll find out where I live. I live in a really beautiful loft in downtown Durham. And everybody will be like, this is amazing. Your life is so incredible. And I'm like, okay, let's get serious here. I do have a lovely life, but it's one that I've been very intentional about building, and I've designed it, and I work really hard to maintain it and to preserve it and keep it secure. Okay. All of that is true. But I come from, like, there's a lot there. I've made a ton of mistakes. Not when I was young, sure, I come from the Midwest. I'm a small town girl. It's a very, very small town of like 300 people. But I very much followed the prescription of life. You do the thing, you do really well, you go to college, you do really well, you find a fella, you get married, you have a kid. Like, I was formulated. I 10-year plan. I did all the things you're supposed to do, and I did them at the highest level. I was very concerned and got a lot of my validation from the world. And then it sort of fell apart in my late 20s. And I'm always, because I've done so much therapy and work on this, I'm very comfortable talking about this. But, there was a point where this person that the world, like they say, like the world wanted me to be this certain way, but the person that I was, there was a battle, like a real internal battle with the person that I meant to become and the person that I was in my 20s. And I made some tough decisions and a mistake, really. I was unfaithful in my marriage. And it was at that point where my world, this sort of like picture, started to fracture, right? And I wasn't even sure how to handle that. Like, what do you do when this thing you've created for the world and they love and adore it, you are dismantling it, and now you're the subject of, like, gossip or whatever. And I moved through my 30s with a lot of shame and a lot of regret. People say, I don't regret anything. I do. There's regret there. There was a lot of shame. There was a lot of insecurity, a ton of self-doubt. Like, you come from a successful entrepreneurial background, and you're not measuring up all of a sudden. Where, like I said, yesterday you were measuring up. You make a choice, and all of a sudden your world's crumbling around you. So in my 30s, I had to do a lot of reconciling. And I want to say this, Susan, about your podcast around happiness. My one very good friend said to me one day, she was listening to me like complain on the phone. I'm probably mid-30s, making all these bad choices with dating and work and all this. And it was because I was coming from a place of self-loathing. And my girlfriend, she listened to me for a while, and she goes, Jes, every time I talk to you, you're so negative. And I'm not normally that way. I mean, I'm not this way now, right? But she said, you're so negative. And I was like, what do you mean? It's his fault. He did this happened, blah, blah, blah. Why? I'm the victim. And she was like, you got to stop it. You got to stop it, because it's not working for you. Number one, it's not who you are. And if you want to move beyond this point, you're going to have to change this. You're going to have to change your attitude. And having a friend say that to you, and she said it to me lovingly. I'm saying it a little more direct, but she was very clear. She said, you're so negative. It changed everything. It was like popping a bubble. It was like the pin that finally woke me up, right? From kind of this sinking ship, like I deserve to be miserable. And I said, I don't deserve to be miserable. There's a lesson in this. And what is the lesson? And how are you going to impact those around you and change your own personal life to get it together and to move forward? And so I kind of had to go to the basement on this one before I could come out. And I always want to make sure people know that. There was a point where I was nearly homeless. We were trying to figure out food. I had people helping me pay my rent. I mean, I was at the bottom of a barrel in my mid to late 30s. And it served me well. It served me well because it's humbling, and it reminds you that if you got to bet on yourself. You can have people in your life, but at the end of the day, you have everything that it takes to pull yourself out. And I honestly, there's no formula here. I just made a choice. I just made a choice that I wanted my life to look differently. And I started working every day and applying actions every single day towards something better. And so here we are.
Wow. I feel like every conversation is for a reason. And maybe your friend said that to you at that particular time because at that moment you were the most receptive to it. I don't know if you believe in a higher power or God, or maybe just the universe speaks to us, but I feel like she spoke to you, she spoke to your heart, and that just put you on a different page. But what I wanted to dive into for one more question, if you have time.
Sure.
Because you're talking about, you were mentioning your entrepreneurial family and your past in the Midwest and worrying about not measuring up.
Yeah.
You also talk about knowing your origin story and why that's important. Could you tell our audience a little bit about why owning and knowing your origin story is important for your journey?
Yeah, that's good. So just on the top, storytelling in general, we all have a story. And oftentimes we think our story isn't worth telling. Like we don't have the come up story or the, I was this and now I'm that story, whatever. I don't care what your background is. You have a story to tell. And there are people that need to hear it because there's inspiration, motivation, encouragement, and everything that we in our lived experience. And so never sell yourself short. For whoever's listening to this, your story is valuable. It's important. I want to hear it. People need to hear it. It's also important to tell it. And you can't tell it until you know it, which is your point, Susan. You can't tell your story effectively until you reconcile yourself to it and you get real familiar with who you are. And I'm biracial, so my mom is white, my dad is Black. I didn't know my dad. I actually have never met my dad. When I finally found him through Ancestry, which was just several years ago, he had already passed away. And so imagine being raised in a very small town, all white town in Ohio, very Republican, so just politically, just all these things. And you're this one little Black kid being raised in this little town and being loved. And I had a wonderful childhood because my family, they did very well in their businesses. And so the community respected my family. And so they respected this child that they brought home, right? That didn't look like anybody. Now, I think if it was different, if I didn't come from a family that was well off, that story might be a little bit different. But either way, I'm still trying to figure out who I am because I don't look like my friends. I don't look like my mom, right? And so identity for me was off limits for a while when I was younger. But when I went to college, again, making the choices to dig into who I am and what my culture is and what my ethnicity means to me and how I'm viewed in the world was very important, and it was very hard. It was very hard. When you're biracial, you are constantly in the middle of two cultures. I don't care what people say you are. I mean, I present as a Black woman, and I am a Black woman, but I was raised in a white community. And so regardless of what people want to put on me, I have an appreciation and respect for various cultures, and I can walk into rooms and kind of move in different ways depending on the situation. But all that to be said, your identity, understanding what it means to you and how it impacts your decision making, even your core values, impacts your storytelling. And so for folks who are kind of struggling with their identity or aren't sure of their origin story, you gotta, I would say, invest in that before you invest in anything else. Get grounded in who you are as a person. It doesn't make you. In other words, it doesn't like define you, but it is a part of you. Like my origin story does not define me. It does not, it wasn't the prescription for the life that I'm living now, but it does inform me. It does inform the way I think about people. Like I suspend judgment probably more than the average person when I see people, because we have mental illness in my family. I understand what it's like to be in a small town. I understand an opposite political view. So when people are talking to me, I'm not judging you, likely, because I've lived it. So it's informing me, but it is not defining me. So I think that's an important distinction, and it also makes your story very rich. And so that would be my answer to that.
That's awesome. I just listening to you talk, and it's really fascinating thinking about how there's so many masks that people wear when you walk into a room and you're not your authentic self. And I think maybe when you are more in touch with your origin story and you could start removing some of these masks and being who you truly are, you'll show up a little bit more authentic and people will react a little bit different to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear people's stories.
Yeah, agreed.
Everyone is so fascinating. But do you have 2 more minutes for our fast round?
Yeah, girl, I love this part. Let's do it. And I'm prepared. I'm looking at it. I'm excited. Okay, wait, I am prepared. Let me get my notes over here. Let's do it.
Okay. I am happiest when
my son is home. First of all, my son's 22. He's in college in West Palm Beach, Florida. So I am happiest when he is home and we are just catching up and maybe watching a movie on the couch. Like just any time with him is precious.
Oh, beautiful. The best way to find happiness is
to look for it. So I find happiness, you can find it in everything. Like today's a gorgeous day. There's not a single cloud in the sky here. And people call this Carolina blue sky or whatever. So that's amazing, right? So like, I just think if we stop this like rat race that we tend to be on and just look for it, you can literally maybe spin around in a circle and find things that bring you joy.
Yeah, the little things, right?
It's the little things.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay. If happiness was a place, where would it be?
For me, it would be definitely anywhere, like a hammock, anywhere outside that has a cool breeze, a warm day, and the sun. If that's happened, if I had a book, that'd be great too. But I love to sleep outside in the sun on like a 78, 82 to 82 degree day. It's like perfection for me.
Awesome. Curveball.
Yeah.
If you could give one bit of advice to your little 8-year-old Jes in the middle of Ohio, what would it be?
I think now looking back, I would say people are going to set limitations on you and just don't even think about it. Like blow through those limitations. People will set limitations and I want you to ignore them and dream big. This idea of go big or go home. Just try to go big. Don't ever shrink. Don't ever minimize yourself. Go hard in life because we only live once. And so why not?
Yep. On your website, you talk about when you show up in the room and take that place.
Yeah. My quote is, the room is better because you're in it.
Yes.
The room is better because you're on it.
That's so great. Okay, our very last question. And this is just a fun one.
Okay.
Happiness actually was a flavor or a food, what would it be?
It would be the amazing vanilla cream donut I had this morning. And where did I have it? Hold on, let me give them a shout out. Baker's Dozen Donuts in Durham. Amazing, the best donut shop in Durham. And I had one of those and I was in heaven. So that was
awesome. Beautiful, Jes. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for always giving back to the community. You are definitely a woman to admire.
Thank you. So are you, Susan. Thanks for doing this. Platform is important, so I'm glad you're investing in it. So it's awesome. It's great to meet you too.
Thank you. Great to meet you as well.
All
And
right.
for all the folks out there, please tune in. Next week, we'll have another guest. So thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to the link below.